Yes, it's a good question. It's an important question. To enter the world as a woman is absolutely different than entering the world as a man. And unfortunately, it's still, I think, conditions the opportunities women have as professionals. Architecture and construction is heavily weighted towards men, and it manifests itself, all the time. I have a team that works with me in Venezuela on constructions, and they're men, but fortunately, I don't have issues with women hiring them, telling them basically how to do things in a very, as architects are, like, this has to be precise and well done. And the team that I have right now, and has been historically more weighted with women than men, not for any particular reason, just so happens to have been that way. But I feel that, so I can tell you many stories of moments where I was clearly being questioned or limited in my agency because of being a woman. And it's not really, I think, productive to go over these instances, but rather to quote a fabulous Ecuadorian architect, Ana Maria Duran, who I had the fortune of sitting on a panel with her at the architecture biennial in Chile some years ago, 2017. And it was a panel of women. And I loved her explanation. She said, I practiced with my husband, and we would sit, and the client, the contractor, whoever, would always look at her husband, and she was the one handling the finances, or she was the one, on top of that particular project, perhaps. And she said, I don't want to fight this. It angers me. And she went on a different path. She has since, I think, concluded her PhD at Berkeley, and she's died. Her research focuses on the Amazonia and ways of knowledge that, because of modernization, were quelched, but that were much more intelligent about the ecology, non-human forces. She's now, I believe, teaching at Yale. And she says, I decided that I would just kind of enter a crack in our field or in our discipline, and it's just, I think that's pretty much what I did. I entered a crack and has thrived because she, has a line of research that's super valuable, but perhaps underrepresented in academic circles at present. And it resonated with me very much. And I understood that, I am free somehow in Venezuela to kind of explore this space. And thank goodness I was, and am still very committed and interested in it, because I had perhaps less competition from other angles who didn't consider this really a legitimate line of inquiry or of work professionally, mostly. And it has been very difficult to find ways to make a practice that's based on non-capitalist driven forms of praxis. I mean, most architects are supporting a client who's producing some kind of a project because it will, serve as an investment, or, maybe it's their own home, and then that's a little bit different. Or maybe it's an institution. In Venezuela, that used to be a very important line of work for architects. Definitely no longer the case. There's very little work in that respect. And those would be, I think, the forms that most men entered into the field. So I think I too entered a crack because of this condition of being a woman. But on the other side, I had a question in an interview some months ago, why am I interested in this? Or why do I see things this way? And I think being a woman actually allows you to see a lot that is more difficult for especially a white man to see, because it's sort of this notion of privilege, and to understand the world as half men and half women, and yet the perception of agency is so different, is not different from seeing a city that's, half lives in a barrio and half lives in a non-barrio, and yet they are, arbitrarily, those people that live in barrios are arbitrarily encased in a certain notion of their limits, of their poverty, of their stigmas that are associated with them, or preconceived ideas that are absolutely false, but fall on them without ever having themselves done something to deserve them. They just happen to be born, like a woman happens to be born women, or they happen to have been born in a barrio. And I think it's easy for me to relate to how unfair that is, and therefore, use tools of communication, tools within art, tools within public policy eventually, to begin to curb this, just as the feminist movement has done so much to right the wrong, I think, historically, against gender and other movements, gender movements in general.